The MMA Math prediction model, with a little bit of luck, is sitting at 10-1, with the hopes of continuing its positive record into 2025. If you're new to this series, this is part of a long-running experiment on my channel to test the notion that MMA Math is an unreliable predictor of fights. We have created a model consisting of fighters gaining points on their last 5 fights based on commonly held MMA Math rules, which you can find in the description box of this video. The fighter with the most points is the model's prediction of the winner of the fight. Please be aware this is not designed to be an accurate predictor of results. This is merely an experiment, and even though the accuracy record currently looks favourable, please use your own due diligence if you choose to gamble on the fights, and definitely don't blindly follow the results of this model or anyone else's singular opinion. Anyways, the first event we'll be looking at for 2025 is UFC 311, with the prediction of Dern and Rivas originally on the Covington and Buckley card just transferring through. And what a card 311 turned out to be, with great matchups up and down the card. I'm particularly excited to see how Rinya Nakamura and Peyton Talbot are developing, and of course Yuri Prochazka and Jamal Hill, as well as RDR and Kevin Holland opening the pay-per-view. But as always, the model will be looking at the co-main event and main event. Starting with the co-main event for the bantamweight title, with the champion Merab Dvalishvili hoping to defend the title against number 2 ranked Umar Nurmagomedov, who we are starting with. Umar will gain 5 points off the bat as he is undefeated in his MMA and UFC career. 5 fights ago for Umar takes us to the 5th of March 2022 for UFC 272 Covington vs Masvidal, when unranked Umar would take on an also unranked Brian Boom Kelleher. In his second UFC fight, Umar would demonstrate the high-level sambo his team is known for, locking in a lightning-quick rear naked choke just 3 minutes and 15 seconds into the first round, gaining 5.5 points. 4 fights ago takes us to the 25th of June 2022 for UFC Fight Night Tsarukyan vs Gamrot, where a still unranked Umar will be taking on an also unranked Nate Maness. In an utterly dominant display from Umar, he would dominate the fight bell to bell, controlling most of the fight on the ground, and looking sharp in the stand-up with his signature picture-perfect kicks. Umar will win every round on every judge's scorecards, with a few 10-8 sprinkled in, earning 5.5 points. 3 fights ago for Umar takes us to the 14th of January 2023 for UFC Fight Night Strickland vs Imavov, where Umar, now ranked 11th, would struggle to get a ranked opponent and be put up against unranked Raoni Barcelos. Continuing to show off his high-level striking, catching Raoni with a left hook from a blitzing knee, knocking him out just 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the first round and earning another 5.5 points. 2 fights ago takes us to the 2nd of March 2024 for UFC Fight Night Rozenstruik vs Gaziev, where Umar, after taking a year break, would be pushed down to rank 13 and put up against unranked Begzat Almakhan. Begzat would actually have early success in this fight, dropping and hurting Umar very early into the first. Unfortunately for Begzat, however, he would fail to capitalize on this, and Umar would quickly turn the fight around and put an absolute beating on him, this time showing off his brutal ground and pound, winning every round on every judge's scorecards with a few 10-8 sprinkled in yet again, earning himself another 5.5 points. Umar's last fight takes us to the 3rd of August 2024 for the main event of UFC Fight Night Sandhagen vs Nurmagomedov, where Umar, now ranked 9th, would finally get his first ranked opponent and by far his biggest test in number 2 ranked Corey Sandhagen. In one of the higher level MMA fights you'll see, Sandhagen provided more resistance than any of Umar's opponents prior, with his takedown defense holding up extremely well. Umar, however, would adjust quickly and utilize his striking to take the unexpected route to victory by outstriking Sandhagen on his way to a relatively dominant unanimous decision victory and earning 14 points. Okay, with Umar out of the way, let's move on to the champion Merab Dvalishvili, who is looking to make the first defense of his bantamweight title. Merab will gain 3 points as he is undefeated in his last 5 fights. 5 fights ago takes us to the 25th of September 2021 for UFC 266 Volkanovski vs Ortega, where Merab, now ranked 11th, would take on number 6 ranked Marlon Moraes. After getting thoroughly dominated in round 1, Merab would hang on to the end of the round and turn things around in one of the great UFC comebacks, using his dominant grappling and pace to finish Marlon 4 minutes and 25 seconds into the second round and earning 15 points. 4 fights ago takes us to the 20th of August 2021 for UFC 278 Usman vs Edwards 2, where Merab would take on former featherweight champion and now number 3 ranked bantamweight Jose Aldo. In a weird fight that makes no sense if you just read the stat lines, Merab would attempt 16 takedowns and complete none of them, but still somehow dominate the fight through his relentless pace and cardio. Merab would be given the unanimous decision victory and earn 13 points. 3 fights ago for Merab takes us to the 11th of March 2023 for the main event of UFC Fight Night, Yan vs Dvalishvili, where Merab, now ranked 3, would be put up against number 2 ranked Peter Yan. In one of Merab's breakout performances, he would dominate Yan bell to bell, attempting a record-breaking 49 takedowns and completing 11 of them. In one of the easier fights to score, Merab would win every round on every judge's scorecards, earning 19 points. 2 fights ago takes us to the 17th of February 2024 for UFC 298 Volkanovski vs Topuria, where Merab, now ranked 2, would be put up against number 3 ranked former champion Henry Cejudo. After comfortably losing the first round, Merab would show off his absolutely insane pace and cardio, outworking the former Olympic champion over the next 2 rounds to earn a unanimous decision victory and earning 14 points. Merab's last fight takes us to the 14th of September 2024 for UFC 306, where Merab will get his shot at the champion Sean O'Malley. Before the fight, if you were to picture how Merab would win the belt, you'd picture exactly what eventually went down. Merab would wrestle and outwork O'Malley essentially for the whole fight outside of a 5th round rally from O'Malley, where ultimately the champion couldn't snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Merab would win via unanimous decision, earn the bantamweight title as well as 16 points. So there we have it, MMA Math predicts Merab Dvalishvili to beat Umar Nurmagomedov. Essentially, this boils down to the lack of ranked opposition Umar has faced in his UFC career, remembering he is facing the champion after only facing one ranked opponent. However, Umar has looked practically perfect outside of one slip-up, and the bookmaker odds I'm seeing are placing him as the favourite. So it'll be exciting to see if MMA Math can overcome the consensus. With the co-main event out of the way, we move on to the main event, lightweight title fight between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan, a rematch of their 2019 Fight of the Night and Arman's UFC debut. But let's see how much Arman has improved since then. 5 fights ago for Arman takes us to the 25th of June 2022 for the main event of UFC Fight Night, Tsarukyan vs Gamrot, where number 11th ranked Arman would be put up against number 12th ranked Mateusz Gamrot. In one of the best and highest level fights of the year, the 2 lightweights would put on a grappling masterclass, with both fighters having moments of success. Ultimately, Gamrot would be given the slightly controversial unanimous decision and Arman will lose 12 points. 4 fights ago takes us to the 17th of December 2022 for UFC Fight Night, Cannonier vs Strickland, where Arman, still ranked 11th, would take on the 12th ranked contender, this time Damir Ismagulov. In one of Arman's more impressive performances, which there is a few, he would dominate the fight, purely overpowering and overwhelming Damir, landing takedowns at will and ultimately winning every round on every judge's scorecards, earning 9 points. 3 fights ago for Arman takes us to the 17th of June 2023 for UFC Fight Night, Vettori vs Cannonier, where Arman, now ranked 8th, would struggle to find an opponent, being forced to take an unranked Joaquim Silva. Ironically, Silva would pose a few challenges to Arman, catching and rocking him in the second. Outside of this slip-up, however, Arman would comfortably impose his game on Silva, and ultimately finish the fight in the third via ground and pound and earning 5.5 points. 2 fights ago takes us to the 2nd of December 2023 for the main event of UFC Fight Night, Dariush vs Tsarukyan, where Arman, ranked 8th, would be put up against 4th ranked Beneil Dariush. In an explosive victory, Arman would take only 1 minute and 4 seconds to finish the highly respected contender, catching Dariush with a straight right and finishing him off with ground strikes, earning 17 points. Arman's last fight takes us to the 13th of April 2024 for UFC 300 Piheiro vs Hill, where Arman, now ranked 4, would be put up against the former champion and number 1 ranked Charles Oliveira. Arman would find himself in a tight do Bronx guillotine early into the first, as well as an arm triangle late in the third. However, the fight outside of these big moments were defined by Arman's dominant positional control and ground and pound, ultimately giving him the relatively close split decision and earning 13 points. With Arman out of the way, let's move on to the champ Islam Makhachev, who gains 5 points straight off the bat as he holds a prior victory over Arman and another 3 points as he is undefeated in his last 5 fights. 5 fights ago takes us to the 26th of February 2022 for the main event of UFC Fight Night Makhachev vs Green, where Islam, now ranked 5th, would be put up against unranked Bobby Green, who was stepping up on 10 days notice after Islam's original opponent, 4th ranked Beneil Dariush, was forced to pull out due to injury. Islam would make short work of Green, who probably didn't have any business being in there with Islam, especially on short notice, finishing Green via ground and pound 3 minutes and 23 seconds into round 1. Due to this fight not taking place at lightweight, it was a catchweight, Islam would only gain 3.5 points for this victory. 4 fights ago for Islam takes us to the 22nd of October 2022 for the main event of UFC 280, where Islam will get his shot at the lightweight champion against Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Coming in as a slight favourite, Islam would exceed those expectations and dominate the streaking champion, nullifying any offensive output from Oliveira. Ultimately, Islam would finish the champ via an arm triangle choke 3 minutes and 16 seconds into the second round, capturing the lightweight belt and earning 21 points for the victory and an extra 2 as this is where his finished streak will end. 3 fights ago takes us to the 11th of February 2023 for UFC 284 Makhachev vs Volkanovski, where Islam would be looking to make his first defense of his lightweight title, this time against featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. In an absolutely incredibly high-level fight, both champions would put their opponents in deep waters, with Volk's counter-wrestling posing some real challenges for Islam, and Islam's counter-striking posing some real challenges for Volk. Ultimately, Islam would be given the unanimous decision victory, and adjusting for Volk's featherweight ranking gained 14 points for the victory. 2 fights ago takes us to the 21st of October 2023 for the main event of UFC 294 Makhachev vs Volkanovski 2, where the two champions would rematch after Volk stepped up on short notice to replace the originally slated Charles Oliveira. This time Volk would not be able to pose the same questions he did in their first fight, and Islam would catch Volk with a beautiful head kick and finish the fight with hammer fist just 3 minutes and 6 seconds into the first and gaining 19 points. Islam's last fight takes us to the 1st of June 2024 for the main event of UFC 302 Makhachev vs Poirier, where Islam would be looking to make his third defense of the lightweight title against 4th ranked Dustin Poirier. In the competitive fight where both fighters looked really good, Islam would be up 3 rounds to 1 on 2 judges' scorecards heading into the 5th, but ultimately Islam would snag a D'Arce choke 2 minutes and 42 seconds into the round and earn 17 points for the victory and an extra 2 points for the finish streak he takes into the upcoming fight. So there we have it, MMA Math predicts Islam Makhachev to beat Arman Tsarukyan again. I for one am extremely excited for this fight. If anyone at lightweight has a chance of dethroning the champ, it'd be hard to argue that Arman doesn't have the best chance, both on form and stylistically. Much like their first fight 5 years ago, I'm expecting some of the highest level exchanges the sport can currently produce. Thanks so much to everyone who made it to the end of the video. I've been looking at this series and thinking about when is the correct time to stop. Is there a certain number of fights predicted to make a good conclusion on the experiment? Do people just enjoy watching it as a form guide, a reminder of events leading up to the fight? And maybe we just keep the series going long term. I'm not too sure yet, and I would really appreciate any feedback and thoughts on this from you guys. Anyways, thanks again.